There's something different about small towns at night. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels aware. Like the town itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to move, or come back. In most towns, darkness means rest. But in Marrow Creek, a quiet, half-forgotten place tucked deep in the Midwest, nightfall meant something else. It meant the mortuary light would come on. Every night, long after the last diner closed and the train stopped running, people would pass the old Crowe mortuary and see that faint yellow glow through the curtains. It was always there, steady, unblinking, like a watchful eye. For over 40 years, Elias Crowe, the town mortician, worked behind those walls. He was the kind of man small towns relied on, polite, reserved, always wearing black even on sunny days. He knew everyone by name, and, eventually, by the way they looked when life had left them. To most, Elias was just doing his job. But in a town as small as Marrow Creek, where gossip spreads faster than wildfire, whispers followed him. People said Elias talked to the bodies when he was alone. Some said they talked back. The truth didn't surface until the day Elias died. He was found at his desk in the mortuary office, his glasses still resting on his nose, a pen frozen mid-sentence. But what unsettled everyone most wasn't how he died. It was what he left behind. On the shelf behind his desk was a large leather-bound ledger, edges cracked, pages yellowed, the kind of book that looks older than the town itself. No one knew about it. Not even his apprentice, Theo Marsh, who had worked beside him for nearly 6 years. When the sheriff opened it, expecting a simple record of names and dates, what they found instead sent a chill through every person in that room. Inside were dozens of names, none of which existed in the town's records or the state's archives. Each name was written in the same meticulous handwriting, with one phrase stamped across every page in red ink. Buried. Not at rest. That ledger shouldn't have existed. And yet there it was, heavy, real, and damp with something that wasn't just ink. Elias Crowe had been keeping secrets. And the dead, it seemed, were keeping him company. After the funeral, Marrow Creek was quieter than usual. Rain washed the dust off Main Street, the diner closed early, and for once no one lingered outside the mortuary. Inside, Elias Crowe's apprentice, Theo Marsh, sat alone in that dim office, staring at the ledger the sheriff had left behind. He shouldn't have been there. The mortuary was supposed to stay sealed until the estate was settled. But Theo couldn't sleep. He said the mortuary felt like it was calling him back. The air inside was colder than it should have been. The smell of formaldehyde and old wood hit him like a memory, sharp, clean, and heavy with silence. The ledger sat on the desk exactly where the sheriff had left it. But now, there was dust around it, everywhere except the book itself. Like it had been moved. Theo opened it. The first few pages were normal, lists of burials, names, dates, numbers. All neat, methodical, the kind of order Elias Crowe lived by. But halfway through the ink changed color, black to a deep, rust red. The handwriting grew tighter, almost desperate, like the words were fighting for space. At the top of the page was a heading. Unclaimed. Theo frowned. He'd never seen a case like that in Marrow Creek. Everyone here knew everyone. If someone died, someone showed up. Yet there they were, rows of names he didn't recognize. Dozens of them. Each one followed by the same chilling note in red. Buried. But not at rest. Theo ran his finger down the column, whispering the names to himself. And that's when he noticed the pattern. The dates. Every entry matched a year when someone had vanished in town. A mailman who disappeared on his route. A teenager who never came home from the lake. A drifter who walked into the diner and was never seen again. Each disappearance spaced years apart. Each written down in Elias Crowe's ledger. Long before the disappearances ever happened. At first, Theo told himself it was a coincidence. Maybe these were records of unidentified travelers, or accidents the town had forgotten. But something about the phrasing clawed at him. Buried. But not at rest. He flipped another page. More names. Same red ink. Same words. Then, at the bottom of the last entry, there was something new. An empty line, freshly ruled. Waiting. Theo felt it then. A presence behind him. Not a sound. Not movement. Just pressure. Like someone was standing close enough to breathe on the back of his neck. He turned. Nothing. The room was still. But the ledger was no longer open on the same page. It had turned itself. One new entry had appeared. No ink bottle nearby. No pen. Just a name scrawled across the blank line. Theo Marsh. Theo froze. He touched the ink. It was still wet. He shut the book and backed away. But as he reached for the door, the lights flickered once, twice. and every drawer in the morgue behind him slid open at the same time. Inside each one there was only dust. Except for the last drawer. That one was empty. Except for a single black glove. The kind Elias Crowe used to wear. Theo Marsh didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes he saw the ledger, that name written in wet red ink. His name. He told himself he imagined it. That grief was playing tricks on him. But the next morning the sheriff called. A local farmer had reported something strange. The soil behind the mortuary, freshly turned. Like someone had been digging. When the sheriff arrived he found Theo already there, standing in the mist. He was pale, exhausted, eyes sunken. He said he heard something the night before, like whispering beneath the floor. The sheriff brushed it off, but when they opened the old service hatch behind the building, the air that came out was wrong. Cold, thick, like breathing through wet cloth. And then they saw it. A tunnel. Hand-dug. Narrow. Leading beneath the mortuary. It wasn't on any blueprint, not even the town's oldest maps. Someone had built it in secret. The sheriff ordered a search team, but Theo insisted on going first. He said, "If Elias built it, I have to know why." The tunnel walls were lined with old wood, warped and slick with moisture. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Theo's breath fogged the air in front of him. And somewhere in the dark, a soft ticking. Like a clock buried underground. After a few yards they reached a small chamber. Inside were wooden crates. No markings, no dates, just numbers carved into the lids. The sheriff pried one open. What was inside wasn't a body, not exactly. Was a shape. Wrapped tightly in burial cloth. And beneath it, another ledger. Smaller. Older. Theo flipped it open. This one wasn't about names or burials. It was about promises. Each entry described a client. People who had paid Elias Crowe for something he called the second silence. There were no details, just signatures. Dozens of them. But the last entry stood out. No name. No payment. Just one line written in that same red ink. He asked for his loved ones back. Theo felt sick. He whispered, "Who?" And that's when the sheriff's flashlight flickered, revealing something written across the wall in the same red ink. "The dead remember the debt." Theo turned. And that's when they saw him. At the far end of the tunnel, a tall figure stood in the shadows. Thin. Still. Wearing a black mortician's coat. The sheriff shouted, no answer. He moved closer but the figure didn't move. Until it did. The light hit the man's face. It was pale, waxy, but familiar. Elias Crowe. Except his eyes were wrong, wide open, glassy, reflecting nothing. And when he spoke it wasn't his voice. It was a blend of many voices. Men, women, children, whispering together. "You read the ledger, so now you're written in." The sheriff fired his gun. The sound barely echoed, it was swallowed by the dark. When the flashlight steadied, the figure was gone. The crates were gone too. Only the small ledger remained. And inside it, one new entry. Theo Marsh claimed. By dawn, Marrow Creek was silent again. The sheriff filed his report, unexplained disappearance, possible delusion. Theo Marsh was listed as missing. And the tunnel under the mortuary? They sealed it with concrete. At least, they thought they did. That night, the town's power went out. A blackout swept through every street, every home. Only one building still glowed in the darkness, the mortuary. Light flickered behind its frosted windows. Like candles burning where no one lived anymore. No one wanted to go near it. Not after what happened. But around midnight, an old woman named Clara Gable, the church caretaker, said she saw something. Someone. A figure standing by the cemetery gate. Motionless. Barefoot. When lightning flashed she recognized the face. Theo Marsh. Except, his eyes were open, glassy, unfocused. And his shirt, the same one he wore the day he vanished, was soaked through, streaked with dirt. He wasn't breathing. The sheriff arrived minutes later. But when they looked again, Theo was gone. Only his footprints remained, leading back toward the mortuary. Straight to the door that had been sealed with concrete. And somehow, it was open. Inside the air was damp and cold. On the embalming table lay the smaller ledger, the one from the tunnel. It was open to a blank page. But as the sheriff approached, words began to appear, slowly like invisible ink surfacing under heat. Marrow Creek, balance unsettled. The dead remember the debt. Payment due. Then the lights flickered. And the sheriff realized something. The voices, they weren't coming from the room. They were coming from beneath it. The concrete they'd poured over the tunnel floor, cracked open. Tiny fissures spreading like veins through the tile. and through those cracks rose the smell of earth. Wet old human. One by one the whispering grew louder, turning into faint breaths. And then, tapping. Dozens of fingers. Scratching just below the surface. The sheriff ran. He didn't look back. By morning Marrow Creek was empty. No people. No lights. No birds. Only open doors, and muddy footprints leading nowhere. Weeks later, a state investigator arrived to examine the town. Every house was abandoned. Every clock had stopped at the same time, 3:17 a.m. And in the center of town square, nailed to the old oak tree, was Elias Crowe's original ledger. Open to the very last page. There were no more names. Just one sentence written in red ink. The dead is settled, for now. They say a town never really dies. It just goes quiet. And sometimes that silence holds more truth than anyone dares to uncover. Marrow Creek still exists on paper. Maps, archives, county records. But no one's driven through in years. No mail, no phone lines, no light when the sun goes down. Just a road sign leaning sideways, swallowed by weeds. And somewhere beyond it, the faint sound of pages turning. Maybe Elias Crowe was never trying to hide the dead. Maybe he was keeping track of something worse. A bargain made long ago. And a debt that demanded more than life could pay. So the next time you pass through a small town that feels too quiet, or see a light flicker in an empty window, ask yourself, is someone still keeping count? Or has the ledger already written you in? This has been Whispers and Wonder Tales. If you've ever come across a place that felt wrong, a town, a building, a silence that seemed to listen back, share your story in the comments below. Because sometimes your words are all it takes to wake something that was better left forgotten.